Hey crafters, thanks for joining me. Today I'm going to make a monochromatic card, all in blues. Hope you enjoy! So I started with a piece of paper that's 5 by 7 inches, and I used the nighttime sky stencil from Lawn Fawn, and I'm just placing the moon so that it's off the top right hand side of the paper. And I'm going to use some of the very light tumbled glass distress ink. And what I'm doing is putting the ink onto the mask and then pulling it off. And that gives you this kind of glowing outline effect, which looks really effective. And I've just got my stencil and my paper on the Make Art station. That's why I'm using these magnets that help to hold the mask or the stencil in place. So then I'm going to add a very light coating of that same tumbled glass distress ink on the top part of this paper. And it's a very hard ink to use sometimes because it's such a light color, but as I persist with it, you see it looks quite effective. And then I'm adding in a slightly darker shade of blue. So I'm going to use some Salty Ocean Distress Ink. And I'm going to blend this in across the middle part of this background. And at first, I don't want it to be too dark, so I'm using a very light pressure here. And then as I get towards the bottom of the background, I'm going to increase the pressure so that it kind of looks like 3 different shades of blue. So at the bottom it will be the darkest, and then it'll gradually get lighter into that tumbled glass that's at the top of the paper. And then I'm going to continue applying ink until I'm happy with it, and then blend a little bit more of that tumbled glass in the middle, just to darken up that middle section a little bit. Now, using that same Salty Ocean Distress ink, I'm going to use some more of those details from the Nighttime Sky stencil. So I'm going to start with that big cloud. And using the suggestion from the people at Lawn Fawn, I'm going to mask off the areas of my stencil that I don't want to ink using Post-it notes. You could always use Post-it note tape or masking paper if you prefer, but Post-it notes are very handy. So I'm just going to apply a little bit of ink. I don't want it to be too dark because I want to still see that white peeking through on that moon in the background, which is very nice. And then I'm going to move my stencil and apply a few more of those clouds. I'll do the smallest one and the middle-sized cloud as well. And I'll use those same Post-it notes just to cover up the other pieces that I don't want to accidentally ink. Now for most of this card, I'm using the domed foam blending tools from Ranger, which are easy enough to use through any stencil. But as I move on to the more intricate pieces of the stencil, I will use a more intricate brush. So I'm going to add some stars onto the background and use a darker ink for this. So I'll use some Chip Sapphire ink and, as I mentioned, a more detailed brush just to help get into those tiny areas of the stars. So there's actually 2 different star clusters that you can use on this stencil, as well as some stars that are by themselves. But I just stuck with this cluster here and put it in various places around the card. And then I also realized that I'd forgotten to do the details on the moon. So I just used that same salty ocean, and I didn't apply any more ink onto my blending brush because I wanted it to be on the lighter side. So I put some more stars sort of behind that moon area on the right hand side at the top there. And then I put a few singular stars as well. And I just added another bunch in the middle here. And then some more details. Now you can leave your card like this if you want with the chip sapphire stars, but later on in the video I do go back over these just to give them a little bit of a shine and sparkle. So I just decided a few more stars would be good, so I'm going to put one right on the left here, but only one of the stars. Another one at the top here. And then also one on the right hand side. Now I just love this Chip Sapphire Distress ink, so I decided to incorporate even more of it onto the background. So I use the grass stencil from Lawn Fawn and lined it up on the bottom, slightly overlapping where I put that salty ocean earlier, and then added some Chip Sapphire colored grass at the bottom of the scene. And then to make it a little bit more interesting, I added some salty ocean at the very bottom with a lot of pressure. And then I blended these two beautiful blues together. And that gives us this beautiful monochromatic background all in blues. Now, as I mentioned, you could leave your background like this, which is beautiful as it is, or you could add a little bit of sparkle, which I decided to do. Now, I wanted to use some glitter paste over those stars, and you could use a clear glitter paste for this, but I happen to have one that's blue. So this is the water blue color from Glitz Crafts. And it's called a glitter frosting paste, and it's easy enough to apply with a spatula through a stencil. The great thing about this particular brand is that they dry very quickly. So I added some to two of the bunches of stars, being careful not to accidentally smudge the areas. I picked two that weren't adjacent. And then once I'd applied it on these two areas, you can easily heat set it and speed up the drying time with a heat gun, or you can wait 10 minutes or so and it will dry. Now, some of the sparkle pastes that you might use do puff up a little bit when they're used with the heat tool, but this one just dries very quickly. So I'm just going to repeat this on the other stars, being careful not to get this sparkle paste everywhere on the background. And I think that really gives this background a bit of a kick and helps to make it a bit more festive, perfect for a celebration card. So I'll just repeat that on the other stars, being careful to dry in between until I have all those stars covered in that blue sparkle paste. And then once I'm finished, I can clean off my stencil with water to make sure that sparkle paste doesn't set on it by mistake. So the stamps that I used for this card were primarily from the Wild Wolves set, and instead of stamping them in black ink, I chose a twilight colored ink from VersaFine Clair, which is a very dark blue. It almost looks black when it's by itself, but when you compare it to black ink, it really is dark blue. Now, you can't use this ink with alcohol markers unless you heat set it first, because it's a very slow drying ink. So I'm just going to heat set it quickly with my heat tool, and then I'm going to color it with various shades of blue Copic markers. And I just wanted to show you, if, like me, you don't have a dark blue Copic, what you can do is use the blue that you have, add some gray on top, and then blend some blue on top of that, and it gives you that dark blue color that you might not have. So for my sentiment, I'm going to use 2 of them from that same set. And I just put some Chip Sapphire Distress ink on a little strip of paper. And I'm going to stamp "It's Your Day" and "Enjoy it to the fullest" with an exclamation mark. And then we'll add some white embossing powder to these sentiments and heat set them as well. And "Enjoy it to the fullest," I will cut this as a long strip, and then "It's Your Day" as a tiny strip. Now to put the card together, I'm going to use glue on that tree and then put some foam pads behind the howling wolf and that large rock. And I'll put those on the left-hand side of the card, opposite that tree, which is on the right. Now, before I push the wolf down completely, I'm just going to position him where I want him to be, and then stamp that howl with that same VersaFine Clair Twilight ink. And then I can add him in so that he is howling at the moon. And then I've got the 2 cute little wolves as well, and that bird. So I'll just pop up that bird with some foam squares, put him in the tree there, and then I'll put foam squares on one of these wolves. That will go on the right side at the front. And the other wolf, I will just put some glue on and tuck him in behind that rock. And then in terms of the sentiment, I'm just going to place this one along the whole length of the card. Enjoy it to the fullest. And I'll use some double-sided tape on that one. And then for "It's Your Day," I'll pop that one up with some foam squares. So using all these combinations of foam squares and double-sided tape and glue, it helps to give this background some interest as well. And then I'll just trim off the excess paper on the sides here and use double-sided tape to put this on a 5 by 7 inch card base. Now on the inside of the card, I'm going to use that same howling wolf and use that VersaFine Clair ink again. But instead of howling at the moon, I thought it would be funny to make this more of a birthday card on the inside and have him singing. So I used a sentiment from the Critter concert set. It says "Happy Birthday to You" in a wavy line. And then there's some little music notes as well that I'm going to stamp along that, so it looks like he's singing "Happy Birthday." Thanks for watching, and I hope you found this video inspiring. If you haven't already, please subscribe so that you're notified whenever I post a new video. Have a crafty day!